Thank you, and thank you for the kind introduction. I'm Eirin, and today I'm going to tell you the story of how me and my friend called Marcus created a point-and-click game with only AI art. So, how did we get the idea? We thought of this almost 2 years ago when we had just gotten access to DALL-E 2, and we were trying it out, seeing what it can do, and we thought about how could we as developer use this for something like practical-ish, and then we thought about games, and specifically point-and-click games, because that would allow us to really do everything with the AI art, so we didn't have to draw too much ourselves or do any of that stuff, which we find kind of hard. So yeah, that's why. I also want to just quickly say a little bit about how the image generators work. So the main idea is something called diffusion. And the diffusion process itself is basically just adding noise to a picture until it's only noise and no more picture, like this. And that process is not very interesting. You have a picture and then you have noise. But the interesting part is if you can reverse the process and you just have noise and then you get a picture from it. And this is exactly what the image generators have learned to do. And then you also have the addition of the prompt. So you can guide the process from noise to a clear image using text. So you can get what you want. So the process of generating an image starts from noise, and then you incrementally remove the noise and add the prompt, of course, until you end up with a clear image like this. So the image generators that we used were DALL-E, mostly DALL-E 2, because this was a while ago, and also a platform called Leonardo and Ideogram more recently and for this presentation. And we learned a lot during the process. There are some things to think about when you create image prompts to get better results. So I'll just do some basics here. In the more recent times, most of the models have added something called prompt magic or prompt upsampling, which is they basically take your prompt and they improve it before sending it to the image generators. So it's not like essential anymore. You will get good output anyway, but it's nice to know. So you can start with something super simple like a cat, and then you can get a nice picture, but maybe it wasn't what you wanted. So you can do a description of the cat, like a small adult white and black cat with green eyes. And you can also specify the style of the image, so you can do expressionist pastel oil painting, and you describe what's happening in the picture and where it's taking place. So here's a curl-up cat on a wooden floor. But where most of the magic happens is with like lighting and atmosphere. So here I have a cozy atmosphere, a cozy living room, I have morning light, and I have a golden sunbeam. But if I instead use the exact same prompt and I do like a dilapidated living room, dim dusk light, eerie gray sunbeam, and a creepy and anticipating atmosphere, you can get a completely different picture like this. So the first thing we did in 2022 was to create a sort of first draft to see if it was possible. And that looked like this. Just a short demo. It's something. It's not great. It's not great quality, and it's not really playable. But you see that it works. We have some stuff you can pick up. We have a cutscene. It's the basic elements are there. But by creating this almost 2 years ago, we learned a lot, and only half a year later, the technology had already improved a lot. So we decided to make more of a real little puzzle point-and-click game, and that's when we created the adventures of Detective Bao Bao. And Bao Bao is a detective panda, and he's investigating a mansion. So part of the reason why we did a panda is because it's hard to generate a consistent person. It's a lot of randomness in these models. So getting consistency between the different scenes was hard. But with a panda, it's a lot easier because we're not as good at recognizing pandas as we are at human faces. And also with new features and new models, all of that allowed us to go from this in our first draft to this in the actual game, which is a pretty big improvement. So one of the things we did was to train our own model, not from scratch, but just a fine-tune of a stable diffusion model. Because even though we used the Panda, it was still hard to make it consistent. We would get lots of different results. And so we decided to try and fine-tune the model to, make a better Panda, essentially. So we first created a bunch of different pictures of a panda that looked almost like we wanted it to, and we cherry-picked the best examples. So here's one of them, and here's another, and we tried to get different poses as well. And here's the third. So eventually we had a data set of 18 pictures like this. And we also removed the background in order to try and avoid the model to fine-tune on the background features of the images, because we still wanted them to be different. And the result after training the model looked like this, which is not great. But when we combined it with an upscaling feature that was more recent, that takes your original prompt and it takes the original picture and it tries to improve the picture, you could get results like this instead, which look much better. And here's another example. And here's a more recent example with a new upscaling feature. And I think even just that makes a difference. So it's better now than it used to be. I want to talk a little bit about how we create the scenes, but because if you go to the game and you just see it, it can look like we created a prompt and then we got a perfect scene out, but we did a lot of work to get from the start to the finished scene and to get all of the elements that we wanted. So the first thing we did was just to generate a scene. We wanted a bedroom, and so we tried to get a bedroom. And we also had an idea about like a small dragon statue, but that didn't work out here. So this was the base, and then we removed some elements that we didn't want in the picture using the editor tool in the generator. But this isn't big enough to be a point-and-click scene, so we needed to extend the picture. And the way that happens is you have the generation frame, and it sees the original image within the generation frame, and it takes the style and perspective from that, and it tries to extend it. So again, we tried with the golden dragon statue, and this time it worked out a little better, but we still wanted a bigger image. So we also created a nightstand, and we tried to create our main character, because this was before we trained our own model. And as you can see, not consistent. It's very different from what we wanted, but we'll get back to that. First, we made the image too wide, so we had to crop it. So we did that, and then we extended it in the height as well, like this. The next thing we did was to improve it, like you have this, and then we wanted better quality to get to this. And the way we did that was take the picture that we had and we gave it as input to another model that created better quality images. And then we can set how close we want it to be to the original image, and then we got this output. But we still weren't happy with the quality, so we did an upscaling, and then we got this, which was pretty good. So now all that's left is to replace our main character. So we used a cutout from our dataset instead of generating him in, because we already had the scene. And then we did another variation of the image, and now it's getting really close to the finished scene. We just remove some more of the noisy elements that we don't want. And we also added a keyhole, because it's a point-and-click game. It needs a keyhole somewhere. And yeah, that's basically the finished scene. So at least more than one step to get it. But this is a puzzle game, so we also need puzzles. And the process for that is a little bit different because a puzzle is very specific. You need some interactions, and we also had a specific idea about what we wanted. And we tried to generate it. We got this. And I don't know, I don't see a puzzle in here. Definitely not what we wanted. So what we instead had to do was to make a sketch, and we made it in Paint because as developers, that's what we know how to use. And this was the sketch we made. So we have the interactiveness in the buttons on the screen here, but we don't think this sketch is good enough. So we again did the variations thing where we put the image into the model, and then we can set the strength of we can set how strongly we want the image generator to adhere to the original image and how creative it should be. So if you set it to be really strong, then you will get something close to the original image, and then you can turn the creativity up and it does something different, and you can turn it even further up, and now you can see the idea we had is getting lost. And if you turn it too far up, then it's doing a lot of its own stuff. So what we ended up with was this. You can still see our original idea, but it's a lot better. And what we were missing here is the computer screen, so we added that, and we also added in a clear button, all AI generated, of course. And doing text a year ago was pretty hard, so we were really happy with this button. But we also needed a story. And this was right when ChatGPT was released, I think, for everyone. So we figured, why can't we just use AI for this as well? And so I asked for help. Hey, could you create some text for my point and click game? And it said, of course. And so I asked for 10 punny comments about the small window. So the idea here was to have some fun and playful text with a bit of wordplay. But none of the results I got were any good, so I had to ask for 10 more. And still nothing I liked, so I had to ask for 10 more. And at this point, I was getting pretty annoyed because I wanted some good text for my game, and I wasn't getting anything. And I had to I started asking for 20 more. And that's when it replied this. I'm sorry, but I cannot fulfill your request for 20 more punny comments about the small window, as it goes beyond the scope of our previous agreement. So I found this pretty funny, and I guess AIs also grow tired of bad puns. So yeah. Anyway, I want to say something about the good things we encountered with AI, and also some of the challenges with mostly technical challenges. And one of the major pros about this is the availability. So it's very available to use and it's easy to use. You don't need expensive art supplies or art lessons. You can just go ahead and use it. And that makes it great for brainstorming as well. So if you have an idea, you just put it into text and then you get something back to see how it will work out. It's also good for references, like if you want to see how the Eiffel Tower would look if it was made out of baguette. Maybe you won't find that on Google, but an image generator will definitely do that for you. So if you're as curious as me, this is how it looks. I think it could be made of baguette. I also had an idea to see how an octopus with a headset would look like, and that looks like this. And you can also do a variety of different styles. So you can do like a photorealistic image, you could do watercolors, you could do one-line drawing, low poly, you can do digital art, or if you want, you can even do psychedelic art. And you can combine different art styles. So you can do abstract modern art or impressionist, but you can also combine them to get some cool results. Okay, so what challenges did we have when we tried to create this? So one of the things we saw is that it's it was really hard to create opposite concepts of what we have in the real world. So usually people fish for fish and not the other way around. And it was super hard to create a picture of a fish fishing for a human. But when I tried it again recently, it was actually possible. I did have to modify the prompt a bit, but I also did that before without managing to get the proper result. And I thought maybe it's because of the cartoon style. Would it be possible in a realistic style? But it managed to do that like okay as well. Another thing that was a big challenge a year ago was to create hands. They would look something like this. And I think this is still a challenge, but it's improving. So this is a recent result. And the same thing with like placements of objects was kind of hard. So you can try to generate a cat on the moon and you will have a cat in front of the moon instead. And this was something we saw a lot. And I think this has also improved. So now you can get a cat on the moon. There's still room for improvement. I don't think the moon is supposed to be in the background of the moon. But it's improving. And the same with text. So this is a 2023 example of a hello world sign. It says hello world, I think. But now you can do hello world instead. And sort of the same as with placement, we also had big issues with concepts getting mashed up. So if we tried to generate a bear and a unicorn, we would get like bear, unicorn kind of things, not really any of them. But that's much easier now, so I can get a clear separation between the bear and the unicorn. So I wanted to try something a little bit more advanced as well. So I tried a larger prompt to see like how much can I put in a prompt and it will still get the separate concerns. So I tried this one, so I'll break it down a bit. The first part is a cat reading a book. So you can see that's clearly happening. And the second part is the title of the book, which is, it is also doing really well. It's supposed to be The Adventures of Bao Bao and His Helper Milo. And the only error here is the double and. So it says Bao Bao and his helper Milo. So that's pretty good as well. And it's also having the lovely fireplace. And it's having the storm outside the window. So it's basically getting everything I'm asking for here, which is a big change from what it was like before. And it's this is sort of related to that. So before we would try like a blue cube on top of a red cube and we would get 50-50 if it would work or not. But now it's much more consistent. And again, I tried it with something more challenging. So a yellow triangle in front of a red cube on top of a blue cube and everything inside a green circle. I think this is the recent example from DALL-E and it had big issues with it. But if you try a different model, I think this one is from Ideogram, it actually succeeded at making this. I also tried some maybe too complex things like Pythagoras illustration. And this is the old example, but this is the new one. And it's not really, I don't think this is a good illustration of Pythagoras either. And we also had big issues with counting to just 5. I don't think this is 5. And this is the 2023 example, but this is the 2024 example. It's still not 5. So, yeah. Okay, so what did we actually learn from this? I can't tell you how to make it count correctly because I don't know how, but we did learn some other stuff. For example, to consider aspect ratio. Some of the models are trained for specific aspect ratios, so it can be smart to generate pictures in the same aspect ratio, even if it allows you to generate pictures in all aspect ratios. So an example from DALL-E is this cat birthday party. And when I use the exact same prompt in a wider format, I would get this, which is not what I wanted. It's much bigger. And even when the room is bigger, there's more cats, there's more balloons, there's more of everything. Even when I tried to remedy the situation by saying, I want a small room, few cats, few balloons, I still would get something like this. So the solution here was to take the small picture and then use the canvassing tools and extend it. And then I got this instead, which is much more like what I wanted. I also want to encourage like drawing tools, but because it can help you get very specific results. For example, you can get a hat and a cat. So this is my drawing, and this is the generated result. So now it looks like an actual hat. And I think you can get very good results if you're just a little bit better than me at drawing. So yeah. I also want to say a bit more about the magic prompts, like the prompts that are outputted or inputted essentially to the image generators. So you have your prompt, and then you have the middle thing that is changing your prompt and improving it. And most of these models actually let you see what it's been generating, so you can see the magic prompt. So if you look at the image with just my prompt, with this turned off, it looks like this. But then with it turned on, it looks like this, which is a much better picture. And I can also take a look at the prompt that was actually used, so I can see what's changing. And that allows me to create better prompts later on and get more control over the output. There's also more magic words. So that will be words that don't really matter to what you're creating, but that can still help the output. This was more powerful a year ago, I think, but it can still be worth a shot if you don't get the results that you want. So you can have a cat in a forest, but if you make it Ultra HD, then you suddenly get a better picture. So it's this to this. And you can also add professional to a painting, and you have this, and then you can get this. The final tip is just to choose the right model for what you need. If you need text, choose a model that's good at text. If you need game assets, choose a model that's good at that, because that makes a big difference. And I can't really do a talk about AI without brushing on the subject of biases. All of the models have biases. We all have biases. Biases is a thing in the world. But different models have different biases, and sometimes you can also change your prompt to get results that aren't as biased, so we can be a little bit aware of how we're using them. An example of a bias is maybe if you're asking for coffee and you would always get a cappuccino, then that would be a bias in the model. Here is the bias I saw. A president sitting at their desk was my prompt, and most of the results I got were really American looking, even though the United States aren't the only country with a president. I also obviously tried a software developer. And so the most striking thing here is that all are men, but there's also more things in this picture. Did you know that all software developers had bad eyesight, for example? Or that you have to wear blue shirts? Because that's news to me. I also found a really unexpected bias in one of the models I tried. So I inputted the prompt a criminal, and all I could get out was Darth Vader. I have no idea why, but I found that pretty funny. And I'm going to show you a demo as well, but before that, I want to show you some of our bad results, because we had a lot of them. For example, we had this panda multiplication issue, and that is partly because of the aspect ratio. So when we extended it too much, without considering what it was trained on, we got like multiplication of everything. We also had some panda monsters in the early days of this game. I also want to do a mention of my previous employer, Kraftlauget, who made this game and the presentation possible, and also my current employer at the Norwegian Tax Administration, and of course to NewCrafts for having me. So this is just a little video of how the game looks now. I've tried to not include too many spoilers because I have a link after if you want to try it. It's not perfect on mobile, but it should work on both mobile and computer. Okay, so that's it for me. Here's the QR code if you want to try it. And I can also take questions if you have any.
How many times did you need to create this game?
How many times I created the game?
Yes.
So we own, like, the full game is created once, but like iteratively. So how much time? Oh, right. I actually don't know. Like, we created it in JavaScript, so the actual code didn't take much time. The time was the generation. But I think we probably used a month, and we were 2 people doing this. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thanks for your topic, very interesting one. Do you feel it's worth it, just generally, to use AI instead of professional artists?
It's a hard question because
Cool one, yes.
yeah. So I don't think I would do everything with AI in a professional setting. This was more of a, is it possible to do it?
Right.
And I want to support artists as well. So I would mainly use it for like prototyping to figure out, is this a good idea? And then pay people to help me create something.
Thank you so much. That is my approach as well, my ethics as well, that I prototype with AI. It's easy, anyone can try it. My mom can try the game or whatever, and then I can pay the guys and girls to do the craft. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, then